For over 1,000 years, medieval builders created wooden structures that defied time itself. Cathedrals, framed with oak beams, still stand firm. Viking ships unearthed from their graves remain recognizable after a millennium underground. Even simple farmhouses built by craftsmen whose names are long forgotten continue to hold their shape. Yet today, despite all our chemical treatments, pressure-treated lumber and mass-produced construction methods, modern wood often decays in just a few decades. The contrast forces a question many survivalists and historians have asked for years. What did medieval builders understand that we've forgotten? Their answer wasn't technology. It wasn't industrial preservatives. It was a set of techniques built on patience, observation, and a deep understanding of the natural world. These methods didn't just preserve wood. They created materials capable of enduring war, weather, and time. And for anyone building off-grid shelters, homestead structures, or long-lasting tools, these old practices remain just as effective now as they were in the 10th century. Why medieval builders turned to water instead of dryness? One of the most surprising discoveries of the medieval world was that water could preserve wood better than keeping it dry. For most modern builders, the rule is simple. Moisture equals rot. But medieval carpenters had centuries of evidence proving otherwise. You know, it's quite fascinating. Freshly cut timber, when submerged in clean ponds, marshlands, or even clay-lined pits, simply didn't rot. Instead, it actually hardened over time. Archaeology, well, it really does provide undeniable proof. The Oseberg and Gokstad ships, for example, were buried in waterlogged soil for more than 1,000 years, and yet they still maintain their shape and even the tool marks left by their builders. The wooden piles supporting Venice's buildings have remarkably been submerged for centuries without collapsing. Medieval craftsmen didn't know the science, but, well, their experience taught them everything they needed. In oxygen-starved environments, the organisms responsible for decay simply cannot survive. Without oxygen, fungi, bacteria and insects just can't feed on the cellulose and lignin that give wood its strength. Medieval builders would submerge newly cut logs for months, and sometimes even years. The water leached sugars and saps from the wood, removing the very materials that attract pests and accelerate decay. When removed and dried slowly in the shade, this submerged wood became denser, more stable, and far more resistant to the conditions that would normally destroy it. Modern survivalists can, apply the same principle. If you need green wood to last, simply sink it in a clean stream or pond for several months. Once cured and dried, it becomes, ideal for fence posts, support beams, tool handles, and just about anything exposed to the weather. How controlled fire really created a protective armour. For wood that would live above ground, medieval craftsmen relied on fire. Controlled charring, not burning, was the method. In Japan, the technique is known as shou-sugi-ban, but Europe practiced a similar craft long before contact. Builders lightly scorched the surface of beams and posts until they turned black or deep brown. This carbonized outer layer formed a natural armor. Charcoal repels insects, slows moisture absorption, and, well, protects against fungal growth. The pores of the wood close under heat, stabilizing the surface and preventing warping. Evidence of this technique still exists in rural churches, barns and farmhouses, where blackened support beams have survived centuries of exposure. Medieval workers often followed the charring with a natural sealant. Animal fat, pine resin, and boiled linseed oil were common choices. When spread over the cooled wood, these substances soaked into the grain, hardening into a barrier that reinforced the protection created by fire. Anyone building off-grid today can recreate the process. A controlled flame, careful surface charring, a wiped finish, and the application of natural oils will produce wood capable of outlasting most modern chemical coatings. For centuries, natural resins and tannins, provided wood with protection, all without the need for modern chemicals. Medieval preservation didn't stop at fire and water. Builders, they made full use of the natural compounds found in trees. Oak bark was in fact one of the most powerful materials available. Rich in tannic acid, oak extracts were often boiled into solutions and then carefully brushed onto exposed wood. Tannins make the environment too acidic for fungi and, too unpleasant for insects. Combined with slow drying and proper storage, tannin-treated wood became extremely durable. Pine resin was, another essential ingredient. Warmed with beeswax and animal fat, resin formed a thick, water-resistant layer that protected wood from rain and freeze-thaw cycles. Many medieval shipbuilders mixed resin with fine charcoal or ash for even better weathering. The same mixture can be made today with basic tools. Melt resin and beeswax, add a small amount of oil, and brush it over the wood while warm. Once hardened, the finish remains effective for years, Why timing the harvest mattered more than any treatment, really. The most overlooked medieval technique was seasonal cutting, interestingly enough. Builders, would only fell trees in late winter, when the sap had retreated all the way down to the roots. The wood at this time contained less moisture, fewer sugars, and, fewer nutrients to attract insects. Timber cut in spring or summer, on the other hand, deteriorated far more quickly. After felling, medieval carpenters, they air-dried their wood in shaded, ventilated sheds. They stacked boards with spacing sticks to, allow airflow. Drying was slow, deliberate, and honestly, it was never rushed. This method prevented internal stress, warping, and cracking. Modern problems with twisted boards and rapid decay often come from ignoring this old rhythm. For anyone cutting their own timber today, winter felling and slow shade drying remain essential if the goal is long-term durability. When combined, water curing, controlled charring, natural sealing and seasonal felling created wood that could endure for centuries. You know, medieval builders weren't just lucky. Their methods were intentional, carefully tested and refined over many generations. These techniques still work today because, well, the natural principles behind them simply haven't changed. For survivalists, homesteaders, or really anyone hoping to build structures that last, these methods offer a chemical-free, time-tested approach to preservation, all using materials you can find out in the wild. If the knowledge that protected medieval homes, ships and fortifications matters to you, then do make sure to subscribe to Warfront Survival and share this video with others who value history and practical fieldcraft. The lessons that preserved the medieval world may one day help preserve ours.